September 2021. JPMorgan Chase, the largest bank in the United States, sitting on $3.7 trillion in assets, wrote a check for a startup, for an app, for a platform that claimed to have 4 million users. It actually had fewer than 300,000, and most of those were completely made up. JPMorgan didn't get a functioning business. They acquired a crime scene. That's what the prosecutor said in court. This is the story of Charlie Javice, and this is not a success story. 1993, Westchester County, New York. Charlie Javice grew up as the daughter of a hedge fund manager and a life coach. She attended the French-American School of New York. In 2013, she graduated from the Wharton School of Business at the University of Pennsylvania, one of the most elite business schools on the planet. While still a freshman at Wharton, she founded PowerUp, an online platform to help students launch microfinance clubs. Social entrepreneurship, a compelling origin story. By the time she graduated, the financial sector was already watching her. The voice of a microfinance generation. That's what Wharton's own magazine called her. She was 22 years old. In 2016, at the age of 24, Charlie Javice founded a new company, Frank. The idea was simple. American students were leaving billions of dollars in financial aid on the table every year because the FAFSA, the free application for federal student aid, was an overwhelmingly complex document. Hundreds of questions, dozens of pages. Frank promised to compress that process into minutes. Forbes 30 under 30, Crane's 40 under 40, CNBC interviews, New York Times features. In 2018, she raised $10 million in funding. Everything looked perfect, but from the very beginning, there were red flags, and nobody looked. 2017, Frank's website was frankfafsa.com. On social media, the platform referred to itself as Frank's FAFSA. The problem: FAFSA is a registered trademark of the U.S. Department of Education, and Frank had no official affiliation with the federal government. Yet it was positioning itself in a way that confused students into thinking they were navigating an official government portal. The Department of Education sent a cease and desist letter. Frank settled in 2018, changed the domain to frank.com, added a disclaimer. This settlement was public record. Anyone could have read it. That same year, a co-founder of Frank filed a lawsuit against Javice in Israel, alleging wage theft. In 2021, the court ordered Javice to pay $35,000 in damages. In 2019, Javice made a very public claim. American students leave $40 billion in financial aid on the table every year. Student aid expert Mark Kantrowitz directly challenged the figure. He stated that Frank's service did nothing to increase the amount of aid students received compared to completing the FAFSA on their own. In 2020, Congress asked the FTC to investigate Frank for deceptive practices. The FTC sent a formal warning letter. While all of this was happening, Charlie Javice was smiling on CNBC. And then, in 2021, JPMorgan walked in. 2020, Jamie Dimon could see what was happening. Fintech companies were rewriting the rules of banking. Venmo, Robinhood, Chime. The younger generation wasn't walking into bank branches anymore. They were living inside apps. JPMorgan didn't want to be left behind. The strategy was clear. Capture young customers early. Get them into the JPMorgan ecosystem while they're still in college. A university student today is a lifelong customer tomorrow. And Frank looked like the perfect vehicle. In the summer of 2021, Charlie Javice approached JPMorgan about a potential acquisition. Her pitch: Frank had 4.25 million users, present across more than 6,000 colleges and universities, and on track to reach 10 million by the end of the year. JPMorgan executives were impressed. September 2021, JPMorgan Chase acquired Frank for $175 million. Javice personally received over $21 million in stock proceeds from the deal, plus a position as managing director at JPMorgan and a promised $20 million retention bonus. CNBC announced the deal as a major story. Frank had served more than 5 million students. Jamie Dimon had signed off on the acquisition. A few months later, everything collapsed. After acquiring Frank, JPMorgan did something routine. It sent a marketing email campaign to Frank's supposed customer base. 400,000 users, a normal bounce rate for JPMorgan's own campaigns, around 1%. Their system runs at 99% deliverability. This time, 70% bounced back as undeliverable. 70%. 280,000 out of 400,000 supposed customers did not exist. JPMorgan launched an internal investigation. What they found was far worse than anyone had expected. During the acquisition negotiations, Javice first turned to her own engineer, Patrick Vover, Frank's director of software engineering. Javice asked Vover to generate synthetic data, a list of over 4 million fake student profiles, to present to JPMorgan as proof of Frank's user base. Vover raised concerns about the legality of the request. According to trial testimony, Javice responded, in French, "We don't want to end up in orange jumpsuits." Vover refused. Javice found someone else, Adam Kapelner, an associate professor of mathematics at Queens College and an old acquaintance from Wharton. Payment, $18,000. Assignment, generate a statistically realistic but entirely fabricated dataset of 4.5 million student profiles, complete with names, addresses, email addresses, and demographic data. Kapelner produced the dataset. It was sent to the third-party data verification firm JPMorgan had engaged as part of its due diligence process. That firm never verified whether the people on the list actually existed. December 2022, JPMorgan filed a civil lawsuit against Javice and her co-defendant, Chief Growth Officer Olivier Aymar. January 2023, Frank's website was shut down permanently. April 2023, federal prosecutors in Manhattan announced a 4-count criminal indictment: securities fraud, bank fraud, wire fraud, and conspiracy. Javice was released on a $2 million bond. She surrendered her passports. Here's where it gets interesting. Javice sued JPMorgan in Delaware Chancery Court. Her argument: under the terms of the Frank acquisition, the bank was contractually obligated to cover her legal defense costs. The court agreed. JPMorgan Chase was forced to pay the legal fees of the person who had defrauded them. Total legal costs, over $100 million. February 2025, the criminal trial began. 6 weeks. The jury heard Patrick Vover testify about the orange jumpsuits conversation. They heard Adam Kapelner explain exactly how he generated the fake dataset. They heard JPMorgan executives admit they had taken Javice's claims at face value throughout the entire negotiation. March 28, 2025. The jury returned a verdict of guilty on all 4 counts. September 29, 2025. Sentencing hearing. Javice addressed the court. She wept. She apologized. "Not a day passes that I do not feel profound remorse. I will spend my entire life regretting these errors." Judge Alvin Hellerstein replied, "Markets require honesty. It's biblical. Your actions were not honest." Sentence: 85 months, over 7 years in federal prison. Forfeiture: $22.4 million. Restitution: $287.5 million. Payable to JPMorgan Chase. This is not solely Charlie Javice's failure. Judge Hellerstein said it himself during sentencing. They have a lot to blame themselves, JPMorgan, in failing to adequately verify Frank's customer claims. So let's do what we do here. The autopsy. Failure number 1. Red flags were public and were ignored. The 2017 Department of Education dispute. Public record. The FTC warning letter. Public record. Mark Kantrowitz's direct challenge of Frank's core claims. Public record. A serious due diligence process would have surfaced all of this. The question is whether anyone was motivated to look. Failure number 2. The core metric was never independently verified. JPMorgan sent user data to a third-party verification firm. That firm never checked whether the people on the list were real. In a $175 million acquisition where the entire value proposition rested on user count, the user count was never confirmed against any independent source. Failure number 3. Competitive pressure overrode critical thinking. JPMorgan was under fintech pressure. They needed young customers. They needed a story. Charlie Javice gave them a perfect story. And when a deal feels like it solves your problem at exactly the right time, the instinct is to close, not to question. Failure number 4. The prestige heuristic. Forbes 30 under 30. Wharton. Apollo-backed. These labels functioned as social proof, replacing actual verification with credential-based trust. In the startup ecosystem, this pattern is not rare. It is the default. Startup Cemetery opened this case for one reason. Charlie Javice is not an anomaly. She is a product of a system. High growth pressure, media manufactured prestige, due diligence eroded by social trust. This formula didn't start with Frank. It didn't end with Frank. But Frank makes the mechanism extraordinarily visible. The red flags were there. Years before JPMorgan wrote a single check, a federal regulator raised concerns. A consumer protection agency raised concerns. A domain name had to be legally changed. A co-founder sued for wage theft. Independent experts publicly challenged the company's core claims. And yet, $175 million. Judge Hellerstein, moments before delivering his sentence, said, "I sentence people not because they're bad, but because they do bad things." Charlie Javice is in federal prison. JPMorgan acknowledged it had purchased, in the prosecutor's words, a crime scene. Frank's website is offline, and dozens of startups are running the same playbook right now. Startup Cemetery, the autopsy never ends.